Hey, this is Scott, and this is my final review of the Tamron 85mm f1.8 VC. If this is your first time to this channel, thanks for watching. Be sure to check out my other videos and subscribe if you want to see more in the future. As this is my final review of this lens, I will just breeze over everything that I've talked about in the past and then touch a little bit in more detail about things that I haven't mentioned yet. So if you want to see anything else in more detail, be sure to check out my first look video and my image quality video, which I will have linked on screen now and also down in the description below. As I mentioned in my image quality video, the Tamron is very impressive. Technically speaking, it beats out the Canon 1.8 and even 1.2 in a lot of different ways. As far as image quality goes, the only thing that I want to add is that for some reason, it seems like the Tamron always underexposed my images. This is not a light transmission issue, it's just how the lens somehow worked with the camera. So when I was using aperture priority mode, the Tamron lens would typically come out either 2/3 or a full stop with a higher shutter speed, which resulted in a 2/3 or one full stop underexposed image. Side by side you can see the difference, and the shutter speed is different. It's not like the sun went in so it got a slower shutter speed on one than the other. It was actually different exposures caused by a faster shutter speed on the Tamron. And the Tamron was underexposed as to what I've experienced with all of my other lenses. The Canon wasn't overexposed or anything like that. I don't know why that happens. If you're shooting in manual, it shouldn't be an issue as long as you are aware of it. And same for aperture priority, just you have to be aware of it. I don't know if anybody else had this experience or not, so let me know down in the comments if that's happened to you. This didn't happen to me with the Tamron 70-200, so I'm not sure if it's unique to this lens or what the issue really is. In terms of build and design, as I said in the first video, everything is really nice. It looks nice, it feels nice, the hood is a very nice quality hood, the manual focus ring turns very smoothly and it's well weighted. The only thing that I do want to change a little bit from that video is when it comes to the switches on the side. The switches are the same design as the 70-200 in this new design from Tamron, the G2 of the 70-200. And I mentioned in my review of that I really didn't like those switches. They tended to easily get turned off when you carried it on your side on a strap, just from rubbing against your hips or something like that. And it was really annoying because you would pull the camera up to your eye and the autofocus would be turned off or the VC would be turned off or something like that. This is the same design as far as how the buttons are made physically, but it didn't actually cause really any problems with me in this lens. I don't know if that's because of the lens size or weight or what it is exactly, but just be aware that this lens doesn't seem to suffer from that issue as much as the 70-200 did. It didn't never happen, but it almost never happened, so I wouldn't really consider it much of a thing to be concerned about. Speaking of VC, it's amazing on this lens. Of course, similar to the G2 of the 70-200, it performs very well. With slow shutter speeds, that's just obvious. Tamron's VC is very, very good. But also just the 85mm focal length is where it kind of starts to be noticeable in your viewfinder that you have some handshake going on. And I never noticed it before, but when you shoot with this lens, the viewfinder is just so smooth and like it looks like you're on a tripod almost when you're hand holding. And when you go back to a non-stabilized lens, you can really notice the difference. So just in terms of how it looks through the viewfinder with VC on this lens, I just love it. It makes it really stable and just it's very easy to compose and focus on even small details because of that. Compared to the Canon 1.8 and even 1.2, the Tamron is the only lens of that bunch that has weather sealing. And it also has a nice fluorine coating on the front element that will help to repel things like fingerprints or dust or water, and it will just really help to keep that front element clean, which is really nice. On top of that, just as a little side note, the Canon 1.8 not only doesn't ship with a lens hood, but it doesn't have the typical attachment point for a lens hood, so you can't use a traditional lens hood with it, which is kind of a bummer. Looking at the autofocus speed on these three lenses, the Canon 1.2 is obviously the slowest. Even though everybody always talks about that, I've mentioned in previous videos that it's never bothered me. It's been fast enough and consistent and reliable enough for me. I've never had any issues with it, but it is definitely the slowest, and it has the longest throw of all three of these lenses. The Tamron and the Canon 1.8 perform very similarly as far as speed, but none of these lenses are really going to be able to keep up with action too much, especially when they're wide open and you have that very shallow depth of field. I tried to shoot my daughter on a swing with the Canon 1.2 and the Tamron just to see how they stack up against each other, and neither of them are going to get you a high percentage of in-focus shots with that kind of motion. With the Tamron, I ended up getting about 35% of the shots in acceptable focus, and with the Canon about 45%, but those differences could be due to a lot of other factors. So You will get some shots, but neither of them are going to be made for that, and those are both shot at 1.8. If you stop down a little bit, you might have a little bit more leeway as far as your depth of field that helps as far as how many shots you're getting in focus. But when you're shooting wide open or at 1.8 with the 1.2 Canon lens, you're not going to get a whole lot of shots in focus. They're just not made for that kind of action. While the overall autofocus speed of the Tamron and the Canon 1.8 were very similar, when locking onto a subject, the Tamron seemed a lot more sure of itself, and I would definitely trust the Tamron more than the Canon 1.8. Again, that's not to say that the Canon 1.8 is bad, especially for the price, just it falls a little bit behind the Tamron in my personal opinion. So again, if you want to see more detail about image quality or build quality, check out my first two videos, which are linked down below. But overall, especially for the price, this Tamron is one solid lens. As I mentioned in my image quality video, the Canon 1.2 is a bit more artistic in the way that it renders things like flare or just different situations, but the Canon is very strong. It has a very clean image and very technically strong image. And the build quality, things like weather sealing, vibration control, everything, it's unique to this lens. So I would definitely recommend it to anybody who's thinking about getting it. And if you're trying to contemplate between the Canon 1.8 and the Tamron 1.8, I would definitely say if you have the time to save a little bit more money for the Tamron, that would be definitely the way to go. It's more than just image quality. The Canon 1.8 can definitely hold its own, but the Tamron just has so much more to offer in terms of VC, weather sealing, and things like that, and just an overall stronger image. So I would definitely recommend it. I would also recommend the Canon 1.2 if you have the money. It's a very special lens to me. It's different from the Tamron, but it definitely has its own personal appeal. As always, if you have any questions or comments, leave it down below. I'd love to hear from you, and I'll definitely get back to you. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and as always, thank you for watching.